Shell in our members only section just wrote in, CNN just reported Stephen Miller tests positive for COVID. So we were in break when I read that, and that's what I'm talking about when I say we do the show together. It's not just us, you guys are the Young Turks. tyt.com/join to become a member and inform me about the news while we're live on air. So it turns out, yes, that's true. Shelley's right, or Shelley's right. Stephen Miller has COVID. So there's a couple of interesting parts of the story, but first I have to pretend to be somber about this and be like, "Oof, Stephen Miller." Okay.
No, you don't have to pretend. Stephen Miller is pure evil. He's garbage. In a perfect world, in a utopian world, he would receive his medical care in an overcrowded cage with, space blankets, foil blankets to keep himself warm. That's what Stephen Miller deserves. And for all the conservatives who are crying about it, go ahead and cry about it. That's what you guys deserve too. Yeah. Period.
Well, I think it might have been Tommy Christopher on Media made a good point today. He said, "Look, I'm not wishing ill on the guy, but I don't have to root for him. Like my heart doesn't have to go out to a guy who will not reciprocate and has no heart of his own." So, and if you're keeping it real for progressives, who are they rooting to get coronavirus? If they were rooting, which you shouldn't be, he would have been probably number 2 on the list after Trump. Anyways, so he's the architect of the anti-immigration, the most racist, most bigoted parts of Donald Trump's policies, not just anti-immigration, not just the kids in cages, but every part of the bigoted policies that Donald Trump has put forward, Stephen Miller has been the architect of. So in a sense, he's the patient zero of bigotry in the White House, if you will. Now here comes an interesting twist in the story. He apparently had been working remotely for the last 5 tests. This is Haley Jackson from NBC reporting, testing negative every day through yesterday, but now has tested positive. That's interesting. So we're not sure where they all got this. The number one theory was the super spreader event at the Rose Garden when they were celebrating Amy Coney Barrett, and like morons, none of them wore masks. They sat right next to each other, they shook hands, they hugged, and next thing you know, 3 Republican senators have coronavirus, and it seems like almost everyone at the White House. Now, it's of course possible that some of the folks at the White House got it at the Rose Garden event. That was all the way back on September 26th. So now about 10 days ago, and then others like Stephen Miller might have gotten it from other folks who were sick, but still walking around the White House. And now it shows up for him as a positive test at this point. So look, if you didn't know already, or if you're a Republican, newsflash, coronavirus is really, really contagious. And so that's Stephen Miller's situation now. He's the 17th person connected to the White House to get coronavirus. Is it a coincidence that Biden's campaign is not ravaged by coronavirus and Trump's campaign, including his campaign manager and his White House, are ravaged by it? No, it's not at all a coincidence. They told you it was no big deal. They downplayed it. Trump's on tape saying he's gonna downplay it, and he did. And then they went around without masks like jackasses, thinking it was no big deal and that they were above the law, including the laws of physics. And it turns out physics disagreed and coronavirus disagreed. So now Stephen Miller joins Kellyanne Conway, Haley McEnany, Donald Trump, Melania Trump, Ronna McDaniel, who's the head of the Republican Party, Stepien, who's Trump's campaign manager, and the list goes on and on. There's so many people who have coronavirus inside the White House, I've forgotten all of them. So, and at least 10 in the White House specifically now with coronavirus, let alone the ones that are related to the White House, let alone the Republican senators. So devastation within the Republican Party. And whether you call it just desserts or not, it makes sense because they're the ones who thought it wasn't a big deal and they were above it. And they came to find out that they're not above it. And it is as contagious as the rest of us told them, and that doctors and scientists are actually correct.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.